going on in Georgia since 2014. They've registered people to vote. They've learned how to get people out that weren't ever registered. But we have also countered it as Republicans. I believe that the president's going to win. It is going to be close, closer than we would have ever guessed. But also, David Perdue is going to win. And then we're going to have a runoff in this special election to fill the seat that Johnny Isakson left open. And that's going to be a knockdown slug fest because unlike Louisiana, we're not used to jungle primaries in Georgia, but we're going to be contending with one.
You know our system well, Congressman. That's what we're always used to here. And now we're going to see it in Georgia. We'll be watching. Love to have you back on the program soon. Thank you so much. And keep up the great work for the Trump campaign. All right. A big thank you to all of our great viewers on Real America's Voice. We'll be back with you tomorrow for another edition of Ringside Politics with Jeff Cruere. A lot more coming on the radio with us right here on WGSO as Ringside returns. But first, a brief timeout.
Wake up every morning with just the news. All the news and none of the noise. Just the News AM starts now.
Hey there, good morning, and welcome to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. Glad you are here. We just put out a breaking news email alert at justthenews.com. Go to our website for an update on that. The CEO of a Hunter Biden-tied firm is agreeing to provide documents to a U.S. Senate committee. Now, the CEO of this company, Sinohawk Holdings, his name is Tony Bobulinski, says that Joe Biden, the man himself, was supposed to get a piece of his son's Chinese venture. Explosive charges here. Again, go to justthenews.com. We'll keep you posted on all of this. And in the meantime, I want to turn your attention to a big story we're also covering. We covered it exclusively at Just the News. I'll put the headline up here on screen for you. It's a sensitive issue. Rudy Giuliani, who is the former New York mayor and a former U.S. attorney, has filed a police report on purported the Hunter Biden laptop alleging child endangerment. The evidence from the alleged Hunter Biden computer was turned over to the Delaware Justice Department. I had an exclusive interview with Bernie Kerik, who went with Rudy Giuliani to the Delaware Police Department. Take a look. So, Commissioner Kerik, what's the latest from the response? Have you gotten a response yet to the criminal referral that you gave to the Delaware Police about this laptop issue?
Well, we were there 2 days ago, got there around 11 o'clock in the morning, met with the captain and lieutenant of detectives for the county police, gave them a bunch of evidence that we feel, substantiated child endangerment and other things that they're going to have to look at. We have since been told that the evidence that we gave them was turned over to the Maryland Attorney General. And last night we learned from the FBI, someone reported that the FBI has acknowledged that they have now received that package from the Delaware Attorney General, and they were initiating an investigation, or the investigation was initiated over the last few days as a result of Mayor Giuliani coming out with basically exposing the existence of the laptop and the hard drives. So
what you have said is that this is reportedly a minor female who was exposed to endangerment. That's a very explosive allegation. Is this someone who you think Joe Biden had any knowledge of this? I mean, certainly Joe Biden himself today said that this is all garbage. This has been peddled by Giuliani, Trump's henchmen, because it's a desperate campaign move.
So here's what we know, and we know this based on text messages from Hunter Biden to his father, Joe Biden. And in the text message, Hunter Biden tells his father that his, Hunter Biden's therapist, doesn't want him around this minor, and he gives a number of reasons why. We're positive that Joe Biden was aware of the conversation because he responded to it. There are other text messages prior and after that message. So we know that he was talking to Joe Biden.
Well, and what was Joe Biden's response in the text messages?
Well, I don't want to get into that. I think that's for the police to really get into. The reason we turned it over to the authorities, if it was New York City, if I was still the police commissioner or Rudy Giuliani was still the mayor, we would be mandated by law to turn it over and to have somebody investigate. In the state of Delaware, there's a mandatory reporting requirement for anyone that comes across or suspects child exploitation, sexual misconduct, child endangerment. There's a mandate in the Delaware law that you have to report it to authorities, not just public servants, but anyone. So,
and there's no evidence that Joe Biden did that.
Not only is there no evidence Joe Biden did it, there's no evidence that the therapist did it. There's no evidence that anybody else in the family did it. And my concern right now is there's no evidence that the FBI did it, and they had the actual hard drive containing these communications since, I believe, December 9th. That's when they picked up the MacBook Pro from the vendor that had repaired it. So this stuff has been going on for 2.5 years. The FBI has been in possession of the hard drive, the MacBook Pro. This material and thousands of other things are on that hard drive that basically substantiates criminality by the Bidens, Hunter and his father, not relating to this but other things that nobody's addressed as of yet.
Why do you think it's taken this long? First of all, it's Rudy Giuliani, yourself, others outside the official force of law, FBI. When the FBI had this in its possession, why do you think it's taken this long? First of all, why hasn't the FBI said openly? I mean, we saw this in 2016 where Jim Comey said he was opening an investigation into the Hillary Clinton email server scandal. Why do you think the FBI itself is chosen to not bring this to light? And why do you think it had to take outside actors to do it?
Well, I can't speak for the FBI, but I think if I was the president, I would have the Attorney General and Christopher Wray, the FBI director, in, and I'd want to know a few things. One, are you aware of it? Did it make it to your desk? And if it did, what did you do about it? And when did you do it? There's things in there that substantiate, that have exculpatory evidence regarding the Russian, the Ukrainian impeachment scandal. Why didn't the FBI director go to the president back then or to the Attorney General and say, look, we're going through this phony impeachment thing, but I have these documents that are exculpatory, that talks about criminality and regarding Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. The China deal, the Ukrainian deal, the Kazakhstan deal, China. You don't bring it up. I can't say why it didn't happen, but I'm sure the president's going to have to figure it out. Why it didn't happen.
And there you have Bernie Kerik. He's the former NYPD commissioner giving his side of his intervention there with Rudy Giuliani, where they went to the Delaware police. You're going to see part 2 of my interview coming up next. Expect tonight at the debate that the president will mention something about this laptop, something about this controversy. Stay tuned. We'll keep you posted on all of this. Good morning and welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. Glad you're here. Let's move to my second part of my interview with Bernie Kerik. Again, we're talking about this headline that I'm going to put up again to remind you of the context. We've been reporting at Just the News. Rudy Giuliani, the former U.S. attorney and also former mayor of New York City, filed a police report on purported child endangerment. This is based on evidence on a laptop reportedly found that belonged to Hunter Biden and then was taken to a repair shop. And the repair shop, it was left there over 90 days. So then under the contract became ownership of the repair shop. The repair shop gave this laptop over to the FBI. The copy of it was obtained by Rudy Giuliani. We're going to get more into these details from Bernie Kerik, who went with Rudy Giuliani over to the police department to file this police report. Take a listen. What's the penalty? Obviously, there are political ramifications, and the president plans tonight on the debate stage to hammer home these issues of corruption. But in terms of legal ramifications for someone who doesn't support or doesn't report child abuse or child exploitation, what are the penalties for that?
I don't know what it is. In New York City, for a public servant, it's a felony. I don't know what it is in Delaware, although I do know there's a state mandatory requirement. Why nobody reported it, I don't know. But at the end of the day, any decent person, I don't care if you're a public servant, I don't care who you are. If you saw the photos that I saw, and you read the emails and text messages that I've read, where you know what's going on, when it's going on, who's involved, you would just automatically report this to the police. Why it wasn't done, I can't say.
And again, Joe Biden has denied all of this. He said that it's garbage being peddled. What do you think in terms of the veracity has not been denied by the Office of Director of National Intelligence? The veracity has not been denied even by the campaign itself in terms of the emails themselves. There was a Biden spokeswoman who said the veracity of the emails, she said this on Fox News, has not been proven to not be valid. So why is there a disconnect between Joe Biden saying this is garbage, but then his own campaign, and then the authorities are saying the verification of these emails is true?
Well, I think there's a couple issues. You now have the DNI saying that this is not Russian disinformation. You have the FBI now saying this is not Russian disinformation. The hard drive is valid. The computer was valid. We now know that. Joe Biden doesn't know what we have. It wasn't Joe Biden's computer. It's Hunter Biden's computer. Joe Biden has no idea what's on it. But if Joe Biden, I'm confident, if Joe Biden went through his phone from 1.5 to 2 years ago and backwards, and he kept his text messages, I promise you, every text message on his phone is in that computer. Every time he communicated with his son, it's in that computer. Every email is in that computer. And there's more. There's close to 28,000 images, and we've only been through just less than half of them. And there's probably close to 60,000 text messages and emails. We've only been through a third of those. There's a lot more to come. The problem for us was when we found the photos and this other information regarding the child that we decided this has to be addressed now. We can address the other stuff later. I know Congress, Senator Johnson is looking at this as well. The FBI has now started an investigation, to our understanding. I think it was mandatory we deal with the kid first. The other stuff can follow. But there's a lot more to come.
Last question. I want to talk about the question of censorship. So this has been a big issue the conservatives have been flagging for quite some time, and you see the president and the FCC now finally saying they're going to clarify Section 230. Two questions. The tech companies said part of why they were suppressing the New York Post story, initially breaking the news about this hard drive, was that they didn't want to push information that had been illegally obtained or unlawfully obtained, the information. So I guess first the question is, how did you guys obtain the information? And then what's your reaction to tech companies and other platforms who want to suppress this reporting?
As far as obtaining the computer and the hard drive basically was the ownership of the vendor, the man that fixed the computer. He had a contract with Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden signed that contract. We have a receipt of it. Once that material was left in the vendor's possession in excess of 90 days, it becomes his property. He had legal ownership for it. The hard drive that he gave to the Bureau, he got a receipt for from the FBI. I think the FBI agent's name was Walsh. As far as, and what was the second?
Well, and so you and Rudy worked directly with the store owner?
Yes. Rudy's attorney, Bob Costello, contacted the store owner. He had tried to reach Giuliani. Bob Costello contacted the store owner. They had a dialogue. He presented him with the contract signed by Hunter Biden, a copy of the hard drive, and he also gave us the receipt that the FBI gave him from the material he gave them.
So the FBI took the hard drive and the laptop and copied the information, and then he retained the original devices?
No, the guy made copies.
He made copies,
but
he gave the originals to the authorities.
To the FBI. That's how it started.
And so the FBI has both the hard drive and the laptop in their possession.
Right. And they've had it since December 9th. I think the subpoena was dated the 7th of the 9th, and the receipt is dated December 9th of last year. So they've had it since then.
Do you think there is a quote-unquote deep state that is trying to suppress this? That's why the FBI has had this since December 9th and has chosen...
You know what? I think there's a much bigger deep state than anybody could imagine. I think the deep state in Washington has infused itself in the government, in the FBI, in justice. We've seen that over the last 2 or 3 years. And I think there's actually an iron curtain in this country now. We're all talking about socialism. We're all talking about communism. We're talking about, this socialist push throughout the country. Well, they've basically thrown up an iron curtain, and the iron curtain is that the tech companies and MSNBC and CNN and ABC and CBS and NBC, they have basically censored anything that they don't want the American public to see. I'm starting to feel like we live in Russia. Congressman Schiff constantly says, everything's about Russia. I personally think Schiff, I think he's a Russian asset, and I think he's controlling or a part of the control of this iron curtain that's censoring anything and everything that the left doesn't want the American people to see.
And there you have the interview with Bernie Kerik, the former NYPD commissioner, talking about the controversy about Hunter Biden and his laptop. We're going to have more on this story throughout the day. Go to justthenews.com for web updates. Obviously, here on our network, we're going to be continuing to cover this controversy. And later in the segment, we're going to talk to a women's group who is asking the questions in the age of Me Too. Will there be a backlash against Joe Biden about whether he knew about this alleged child exploitation? We're going to talk about the possible feminist hypocrisy because we aren't seeing liberal feminist groups calling about looking for more information on this issue. So stick around. My interview with Hogan Gidley is next. there. Good morning and welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. Very glad you're here. We had breaking news. The Senate Judiciary Committee just approved the nomination for Amy Coney Barrett. That means she will advance to the full Senate vote. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has said that is going to happen on Monday. Now, Democrats, we know, walked out in protest. They refused to even be present during the vote on Amy Coney Barrett. Word is that they said they don't want to in any way be connected to the sanctioning or the progress of her nomination. Obviously, Senator Dianne Feinstein certainly has some explaining to do to her left wing, because the left wing of the Democratic Party was upset about the fact that she was bipartisan and congratulated Lindsey Graham on the way that he had run the hearing for Amy Coney Barrett. So, of course, we'll keep you updated on all of this. And in the meantime, I want to talk about my interview that I had yesterday with Hogan Gidley. We talked about the debate that's happening tonight. Now, the debate itself has been subject of many debates. My latest article on justthenews.com, I want to put that headline up for you so you can check that out. And it's looking at the moderator-chosen debate topics and how they basically ignore top voter priorities like the economy and crime. If you look at the actual debate topics, the ones that were chosen by Kristen Welker, who is an NBC journalist who will be moderating tonight, she chose the topics of COVID, American families, race in America, climate change, national security, and leadership. And what I did was I went through and I looked at polling and what do Americans actually care about, and do they match with these issues that Kristen is choosing to highlight? The big answer is, in many respects, no. For example, she's choosing the issue of climate change. Well, guess what? Most Americans in their top 10 priorities do not include climate change on their list of concerns. Guess what is at the top of their list across the board? This was across 4 different studies that I looked at. A study from us at Just the News with Scott Rasmussen. He found the economy is number 1. Same thing with Gallup. Same thing with Pew, and same thing with Kaiser Family Foundation, a very respected polling firm. All of these organizations found that the economy is number 1, top of mind for Americans, and that topic is not listed in what we've gotten so far. This was released on Friday by the Debate Commission. This will not be spoken about at the commission debate tonight. The other topic, law and order and crime, the breakdown in inner cities, the rampant destruction of property. This was not mentioned in the topics either. There is the topic of race. However, all those groups that I just mentioned, they specifically parsed out the difference between race and the issue of crime. Different topics. This priority list that the debate moderator, again, has prioritized race and racial grievance above issues of crime and law and order, but Americans don't feel that way. Americans prioritize the issues of law and order and violence in inner cities from these protesters above. This is based on the data, all the data we've seen. The one exception of those organizations I mentioned was Gallup. It was slightly above on issues of race. But overall, Americans care more about law and order and protecting our neighborhoods rather than issues of dividing people on the issue of race. So Hogan Gidley is with the Republican Party. I spoke to him and I reached out to the Democratic Party at the Biden campaign. Did not get a response, but here's my interview with Hogan Gidley. Take a watch. Hey there, Hogan. So a debate preview for tonight's debate. We have been looking at what voters actually care about. We looked, for example, at Gallup and Pew and the top issues that voters say they care about. The top issue for both these organizations is the economy. And we see the debate topics from the NBC moderator. The economy is not on this list. Why do you think there's a gap between what voters care about and what the debate moderator is planning to ask about?
Well, because all the issues voters care about are places where President Donald Trump has succeeded. People's lives have been improved by Donald Trump's policies, regardless of race, religion, color, or creed. You don't have to guess what Donald Trump would do with the economy. We've seen record high employment for African American, Asian American, Hispanic Americans, women employed at record numbers. We saw more jobs than there were people to fill them. Hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs pouring back into this country after the Joe Biden administration said they'd never come back. We've also seen what would happen with a Joe Biden economy. His support of NAFTA alone, that horrible trade deal that gutted the American middle class and kicked the American worker in the teeth and crushed American companies, cost us 850,000 jobs. Joe Biden's support of China helped shutter 60,000 manufacturing plants and sent 3.5 million jobs away from American workers straight to a communist country. So why would the media prop up a conversation about the economy when it's very clear this president has succeeded on the economy? You also notice they took away the topic of foreign policy. Of course they would. President Trump has a record of success there, too. Already.
Well, they do have national security as one of the topics. But you're right, specifically, not only the whole entire debate was supposed to be about foreign policy, and they narrowed it down to one specific national security issue. But you're right, from a foreign policy standpoint, it's not on the list.
It's not, because, again, this president has a record of success. He's already been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize multiple times because of his work in the Middle East, something that Joe Biden couldn't have thought about ever accomplishing. And all the experts told Donald Trump he couldn't get it done. He got 2 peace deals. He's drawing down troops from our foreign wars. He's done incredible things with relationships with North Korea and with China, with Russia as well. We are now a more respected, more loved, more feared country on the global stage than ever before. So why in the world would they talk about foreign policy when, in addition to all the successes by Donald Trump, we know Joe Biden's record, where his own Secretary of Defense said that every single policy that Joe Biden had pushed in the last 40 years had been incorrect or absolutely wrong. And now we find out more information that Joe Biden knew about some of the shady dealings his family was involved in with Ukraine and with China. Of course, the debate commission is going to try and tip the scales yet again to favor Joe Biden. The media won't ask about it. They only care about the flavor of milkshake he's drinking. It's embarrassing.
Hogan, do you think that Kristen Welker will be a neutral moderator? Because we saw her delete her Twitter account or make it private. It went away, and now it's mysteriously back.
Yeah, I hope so. It's pretty clear already Donald Trump is 3-0. He's defeated Chris Wallace in a debate. He's defeated Joe Biden in a debate. He's defeated Savannah Guthrie in a debate. I guess 4 if you're going to count Leslie Stahl. But the fact is, we hope that after all of the exposure this committee has seen over the last little bit, proving them to be a biased entity, stacking the deck against this president time and time again. We know the 95% negative news coverage against Donald Trump. We sure hope that this moderator, Kristen Welker, gives the president a fair shake, not just asking him tough questions. That's fine. Bring it on. But asking Joe Biden some tough questions as well, as opposed to what's his favorite color and what kind of tree would he be. Those are the types of things that the media have been asking when they do get the chance to talk to him, because he's always in his basement. But when he does pop out, it's always, questions that don't matter to anybody on the global stage and don't matter to anybody in this country who need to see, results and solution-based ideas from their politicians. They don't get that from Joe Biden.
And there you have Hogan Gidley, a spokesman for the Trump campaign, previewing tonight's debate. Again, we were going to give you coverage before and after, all the analysis breaking down what happens at the debate. Look for the president. He's certainly going to hammer home this issue of corruption. The question is, will voters agree that corruption is the major issue? Will Joe Biden be able to respond and push back? He certainly did push back in the first debate, including about his son. He said his son is a recovered cocaine addict. He said he was proud of that. Look for this exchange to continue tonight. Stay tuned. back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. Glad that you're here. I got my second part of my interview with Hogan Gidley, a spokesman for the Trump campaign, in just a second, but I want to set it up for you by putting up a headline from an article that we looked at justthenews.com. It looks at how in Pennsylvania, the state has rejected nearly 375,000 mail-in ballot applications so far. Nearly 90% of the rejected applications were duplicate requests. So there are lots of concerns about problems around balloting, around possible fraud, but it also begs the question about turnout. So if lots more people are going to their mailboxes, how is the Trump campaign planning to surmount this possible surge in new mail-in votings? Take a look to see what Hogan Gidley had to say. We saw the improvement that Republicans have had in record cases in Florida, for example, in terms of the number of voter registration drives and successful voter registration rolls that have been expanded for Republicans. We've also seen it in other swing states like Arizona, like Pennsylvania as well. I guess my question for you is, yes, you've closed the gap, you've improved the voter registration, but what does that mean? How do you compete in the age of the mail-in voting ballot? Do you think that even though you're getting more in-person registrations or people who say they want to vote in person, how are you going to overcome this massive surge that we're seeing in the early voting and also in the mail-in voting?
Enthusiasm, excitement. That's what our voters have that the Democrats don't have. I don't blame them. Their candidate is fairly lackluster. I mean, he's been a complete and total failure for the last 50 years in elected office. People want to get out and vote for Donald Trump. He has a patriotic, unifying, uplifting message, and he's actually been successful improving their lives. Also, when you look at the future and what he plans to do, not just embracing America's greatness and the fact that we are a beacon of hope and of strength and of freedom all over the world, but we want lower taxes for the American people. We want to cut regulations. We want to expand job growth. We want to protect our seniors. We want to get rid of COVID. Those are all the things this president wants to do, and that drives people to the polls. It's not about going out and voting for something you don't like. It's about going and voting for something you do like. That's a much bigger motivating factor. Everyone knows that. And the fact is, Joe Biden has that 47-year career of failure. He can't point backwards to the things he's done because everything he's done has hurt American families, have hurt American workers. And everything he wants to do is embracing Green New Deals and socialist policies like tax increases and open borders and abolishing ICE. Those things would never be good for this country. So I think the choice is pretty clear. And so when you see more people registering in the states you mentioned, like Florida, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, as Republicans, it's shrinking that divide between registered Democrats. That's very important because Donald Trump won all those states last time. Now we have more Trump voters. The apparatus we've put in place has contacted more than 130 million people directly in the last several months on this campaign. That's an army of volunteers.
How does that compare with the 2016?
Barack Obama couldn't have ever dreamed of.
In terms of your comparison, how does that compare, the touch points, 130 million compared to 2016, where you guys were 4 years ago?
Weren't even close, had no apparatus, had no money to spend on advertising, had no money to send out people all over the country speaking on behalf of the president. We've unleashed Operation MAGA while the president was in Walter Reed, and we had the vice president out, the First Families out, Women for Trump, Latinos for Trump, Black Voices for Trump. Everyone's out across this country speaking on behalf of the president, and they're still out. And now we have the president back on the campaign trail after he defeated the coronavirus. So those types of things, getting people out in the hand-to-hand combat, the ground troops in these communities and in these states actually move to turn people out to vote. Democrats put all their eggs in the early voting basket. And while they have seen some numbers out there voting for Democrats, a lot more Republicans than were estimated and thought to vote before are actually voting now. And so it looks like our operation has moved into success mode. Hopefully, it's going to drive us to a victory November 3rd. We think it will.
Last question on this issue of early or absentee or mail-in voting. We've reported here at justthenews.com 375,000 applications for absentee ballots in Pennsylvania alone have been rejected. We're seeing a lot of people. Scott Rasmussen, our pollster, found that in general, you're 3 times more likely to have your ballot rejected if you're a first-time absentee voter compared to an experienced absentee voter. Are you seeing similar things that a lot of people who were maybe first-time voters, maybe they were a Democrat or a liberal wanting to do this, but they aren't doing it right?
Well, who could have predicted that this would be problematic to do everything by mail this last stretch into the election day? We did. We knew this would be problematic. We've been fighting the Democrats in court for this very reason. Democrats always accuse Republicans of doing things they themselves are actually guilty of doing. They said we were trying to move the date of the election. That was false. They are literally passing laws in states to allow people to vote after Election Day. It's fraught with the potential for fraud and abuse, cheating, all types of issues. Hopefully, the folks who are getting their ballots in early are following all the rules and regulations to vote properly. We've been talking about absentee. We've been talking about early voting. All of that is okay. But this universal, these ballots that are going out unrequested, unsolicited to all of the American people, that's a serious problem moving forward. And look, if you can put on a mask and go to the grocery store and get your groceries, if you can put on a mask and go get a $9 latte at Starbucks, you can sure put on a mask, socially distance, do it responsibly, and go out and vote. Now, while we do encourage early voting and absentee, those are the ways that are tested and tried and true. We want our forces out on Election Day to go vote for the president. They're excited about it. They're enthusiastic about it. And we expect to pick up some massive numbers on Election Day itself.
All right, Hogan Gidley, we appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
And that's Hogan Gidley with the Trump campaign. Stick around, more coming up. welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. Glad that you're here. We've been covering a very sensitive topic, the issue of possible child endangerment or child abuse, that Rudy Giuliani has alleged that Joe Biden had evidence of this and chose not to report it. I want to put up on screen a report or a mandatory reporting requirements in Delaware for children if you suspect that there has been any form of child abuse or neglect. The statute here is very clear. It says, because the law is unclear on this issue, everyone should report all instances of suspected child abuse or neglect to avoid any criminal or civil liability. No individual with knowledge of child abuse or neglect or knowledge that leads to a good faith suspicion of child abuse or neglect shall rely on another individual who has less direct knowledge to call the below referenced report line. Now, the argument or the claim that Rudy Giuliani has filed with the police in Delaware is that Joe Biden was aware that there was child endangerment of a 14-year-old young girl, and that Joe Biden did not do anything about it, and that this child endangerment occurred due to behavior by Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden. So I have a women's rights expert and advocate here to join me. She's with the Independent Women's Forum. Kelsey Bolar, welcome.
Good morning, Carrie.
So, Kelsey, what's your reaction when you hear this news of the former mayor, also former U.S. Attorney Rudy Giuliani, who has filed this police report alleging this behavior? We're not hearing anything from women's groups on the left, from feminist groups who, in the age of Me Too, say that they stand up for women's rights.
You're right. And the double standard is really because anybody on the left who is supporting Joe Biden right now is claiming that this is just a political smear. I'm not sure how they fully make that argument when we're talking about the potential child endangerment of a 14-year-old girl. I do want to be clear that there are two distinct stories going on here that have originated from this computer of Hunter Biden's. One is, did former Vice President Joe Biden receive funds from communist China while he was serving the American public? That would be huge. That would be really the biggest scandal of the year, if not the past couple years. The left is constantly claiming this Russian collusion conspiracy theory. They never had any sort of evidence to make that claim. And in this case, we now have a computer server that is being investigated. So I want to separate that claim from what we're talking about right now, which is the potential child endangerment. If this 14-year-old child was put in any sort of danger, that would be on Hunter Biden, not Joe Biden. But why is Joe Biden a part of this conversation? Because Rudy Giuliani showed Americans, anybody can read on these text messages, where he was allegedly talking about what he was doing with this 14-year-old child with his father, Joe Biden. So what did his father do about it? Did his father take the necessary, the legal steps to ensure this child's safety? I think that is absolutely a fair question he should be pressed on. But unfortunately, given the lack of curiosity on the media's behalf of any scandal involving Joe Biden, I'm doubtful.
Well, and certainly when we saw the arguments about Brett Kavanaugh, the liberal media, liberal women's groups were certainly not afraid to make any sort of charges or claims. However, there was no laptop, there was no hard drive. And we do know that the director of national intelligence has said that this laptop, this information is not Russian disinformation. And you've also got a former NYPD commissioner and former mayor and former prosecutor, former U.S. attorney Rudy Giuliani, who fought the mob and is an expert in investigations. Why aren't liberal women's groups speaking out about this?
There is such a double standard going on here. And we saw this same double standard play out when Joe Biden faced his own Me Too allegations. The left was not curious when it came to Brett Kavanaugh's Me Too allegations, which didn't present any sort of evidence. All it relied on is one woman's word against his. With no sort of evidence. And in this case, there has been far more evidence presented in what happened, what allegedly took place involving Hunter Biden. And the fact that Joe Biden knew about it is news. This is something we should be talking about as mothers, as women. We all want to protect our children. I have a daughter, and when she's 14 years old, if there is a older man, it's hard to even say what he was doing, but according to these text messages, it sounds like he was walking around in the nude in front of her. That's alarming. That is a huge problem that any parent, regardless of your political affiliation, should be concerned about.
Well, and we do know that the vice presidential candidate, Joe Biden, in the first debate, the president brought up the cocaine addiction of Hunter Biden, and Joe Biden pushed back and he said, my son he's gone through this fight. It's been a fight. People who are struggling with drug addiction, I don't think any of us would say that they don't deserve to be treated with respect and treated as human beings. That being said, a mental illness, and if you're suffering from an addiction, it does not excuse child endangerment under the law. So what's your take on that in terms of Joe Biden? This appears to be his tack.
You're right. Joe Biden will constantly point to his son's very sympathetic drug addiction. And so many of us sadly know friends and family members who have faced addiction crises. And that is not an excuse for any illegal or illicit behavior. It's important. How do you respond to that? Clearly, his son needed help. Clearly, he was potentially involving other people's safety here. What did Joe Biden do about it? We all have sympathy for drug addictions, but we don't have sympathy for child endangerment. All
right, Kelsey Bolar, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. Welcome back here to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield. Glad you've been here with us for the ride. Again, the big story this hour, the breaking news, Amy Coney Barrett cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee. She's going to go to a full floor vote on Monday, according to the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, who has said the full Senate is going to vote on Monday. The Democrats refuse to participate on the vote on the committee. We'll, of course, keep you updated on all of that. And to close the show, I want to put up some good news here coming out of North Carolina. Let's put up this headline. The legendary basketball star Michael Jordan has opened a clinic in Charlotte for those lacking insurance. Now, Michael Jordan, I personally, as a Utah Jazz girl, being from Utah, he broke my heart multiple times in the 90s. I know America loves Michael Jordan, and I love him for what he's doing here. Michael Jordan grew up in North Carolina, and he currently owns the Charlotte Hornets, so it makes total sense that he wants to provide the area where he has such deep roots and give back. And so at the opening of the $7 million Novant Health Care, it's called the Michael Jordan Family Medical Clinic, he got emotional. He even teared up. It's always great when a man feels like he can show some emotion, and society doesn't have to tell him he can't be emotional and show that he cares. And he obviously wants to give back to his community there in Charlotte. Good job, Michael Jordan. Maybe I forgive you for what you did to Karl Malone and my Utah Jazz in the 1990s. All right, that does it for us here on Just the News AM. Stick around. You don't want to miss what's coming up next.